Star Wars 7x7, episode 2760. It's Spinner Sunday, and so we've got a short story for you to talk about here, or at least the second half of a short story. It's Shadows Remain. This is part 2 of Justina Ireland's latest story for Star Wars Insider magazine. It is also the last story in Wave 2 of Phase 1 of the High Republic Mega Enormous Storytelling Initiative, and something that we talked about previously in the podcast about short stories in Star Wars Insider is coming to pass. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So, Star Wars Insider issue 208 is out, and it includes the conclusion of Shadows Remain from Justina Ireland. So, we'll do a little 5 highlight thing like we often do. First highlight will be the story thus far, which is that there had been a dignitary, diplomat, emissary person on Starlight Beacon, and there was some sort of assassination attempt, and Gail Tarpfin, who is the head of security for Starlight Beacon, was framed in the attempt and was assaulted by people working with Jira Staros, the senator from Hosnian Prime, and we're gonna get into The Fallen Star spoiler territory. The Fallen Star, of course, is the novel that kicks off, or finishes Wave 2? Gosh, I'm so confused now. Wave 3. It's Wave 3. So anyway, Jira Staros is working with the Nihil and is part of this plot which involves whatever this assassination attempt was and kidnapping Gail Tarpfin. And so, the framing of it, though, is such that when the story opens, we have Velko Jahan, who is the, administrator of Starlight Beacon, thinking that Gail Tarpfin is possibly a traitor and is possibly the person behind the assassination attempt, but Velko's gut says, no, this can't be the case. So the second highlight to share is that Gail has actually been taken to no space. So Gail wakes up from being knocked unconscious and is bound into a chair on a ship, and Gail can see out the windows, and she's just seeing, stars passing, and is informed by one of her captors that they are in no space. And Gail reacts to this as though she's familiar with the concept of no space, which is interesting for us being outside of the story as readers and watchers and viewers and listeners and whatnot, because there's been no indication in any material so far of what no space is or where it is. We have no idea where in the Galactic Atlas no space exists. We know about wild space, we know about the unknown regions, but yeah, no space is a complete blank to us right now. But I assume we'll probably find out what the deal is with no space eventually, right? They're not going to go through the whole High Republic Storytelling Initiative and not tell us where that is, I would think. All right, so for a third takeaway, it turns out that Velko is not the only one who's having doubts about what appears to be the story of Gail's treachery and departure. So she goes to have a meeting with Rodor Keen and Stella Maru, who are the Republican Jedi, highest officials on the station. I mean, aside from Avar Kriss being the Marshal at this point, which she still is the Marshal at this point, and has just the briefest of cameo appearances as she is leaving the office of Rodor Keen where they were having a meeting or whatnot. Anyway, so it turns out that Rodor and Estella also have doubts and reveal to Velko that Gail was being extorted. There was some sort of extortion messages coming toward Gail, but they don't know how bad it was or anything like that. And it had to do with, it was talked about in the previous part of the story about how Gail was having some sort of affair with Amon Kala, who eventually became king, and how that would be rather devastating if that news got out, and so on and so forth. But for a fourth takeaway, they're not going to be able to use it against Gail after all, because, as Gail figures out, they need her for something. And so that's why she's been kept alive, why she wasn't necessarily killed. But she's able to use that to her advantage and takes over this ship wherever it's flying and sends a message out which gets corrupted, but actually makes it to Starlight Beacon, and she's able to say that the Senate is compromised and that there may be other spies in the Republic, and to let the galaxy know that she was kidnapped. So at least some of the message got out. But the fifth and final takeaway is that it appears that Gale has been killed because wherever they arrived, ships started firing on the ship that Gale was on, and there's no suggestion that she survived, although it's one of those things where if you don't see the person dead and they don't say in the narrative this person's dead, then you can't necessarily know for sure. But I think it's probably pretty obvious that Gale has been killed and managed to get this one last warning out, and Velko sits with this knowledge and decides that she's going to make sure that Gale gets justice in the end for things, which the time in which this story takes place is before the events of the Fallen Star. So where the Starlight Beacon is not at the planet that it's at in the Fallen Star, but it's about to go there, I think, apparently. So it does kind of raise a question about whether Velko is able to dispense this justice, especially considering the events of the Fallen Star. We don't know if she's one of the survivors or not at this point, and based on the way the novel unfolded, we really know nothing about the part of Starlight Beacon in which she would have been. So yeah, there's, I think, a little more to tell. And I know that we are not totally through Wave 3 and that there are stories that seem to predate the events of the Fallen Star as well that we still haven't gotten yet. So maybe Velko survives this and is able to pursue justice. Wouldn't that be nice? But as of this moment, it's kind of an iffy proposition. And so that's the 5 highlight summary of part 2 of Shadows Remain from Justina Ireland, which is the last short story for the High Republic for Wave 3 in Star Wars Insider. And that means that, we're still in Wave 3. We've got other stories to come, but they are stopping with that because we talked about this when we did the short story preview for 2022 and about how the next issue of Star Wars Insider had already had promotional covers released, and the blurb on the cover just said a short story. It didn't say a High Republic short story, which I flagged for you and said, hey, that's unusual. That seems to indicate that they're not going to continue with High Republic short stories for a while. And it turns out that that is the case. There's a promo at the end of the story in Insider 208 that says next month or next issue it's going to be a short story featuring Zam Wessel and Jango Fett. So yeah, we're stepping away from High Republic short stories for a while, hopefully knowing that Cavan Scott is going to be picking up on a new series of High Republic stuff for Marvel in October. Maybe that means that we're going to get back to High Republic short stories once we get into Phase 2 later this year, but for now we are stepping away from High Republic stuff in Star Wars Insider. So there you go. That's that little bit of news. And that is going to do it for this episode of the show today. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.